So, I need your full name.
What?
Your full name.
My phone number.
Full name.
Full name, Charley, Charley, middle initial W, last name Havice, Havice.
And when you were discharged from the military, what was your rank?
What?
Your rank.
My rank?
When you got
I was sergeant in the Air Force.
Sergeant Air Force. And what was your main job when in the Air Force?
Well, most of the time I was sergeant of base operations, and what I did then was keep track of all of the airplanes that we had assigned to us, and we had B-29s.
Did you ever fly any B-29s?
I've ridden in them. I didn't do the flying. I rode in a lot of them. I went to Alaska in a B-29 and back.
So, where were you stationed when in the Air Force?
What?
Where were you stationed when you were in the Air Force?
Stationed? Where was you
We
stationed?
were stationed. The only place I was stationed outside the continental United States was Alaska when it was a territory. I was up there for what they call Arctic indoctrination. They sent some of us up there, and we went up to Fort Richardson, which is right there at Anchorage, Alaska, and Elmendorf Field. We were assigned to Elmendorf Field, but we couldn't stay there. We had to stay out in the Quonset huts, out foothills of the mountains. And they were up there for indoctrination, and they picked the right year because they set a record on cold. We seen 70 below zero. Oral freeze it was 60 below. We'd build fire underneath the oil drums.
So, did you ever experience any form of action or any kind of...
No. Now, actually, I was in World War II, but the fighting was over with before I went in. The fighting in World War II was over with in October, I believe it was. August. You remember what month? August.
August, I think.
I believe it's August.
I think it was
of 45.
August 6, 1945.
Yeah.
World
I
War
went in
II.
service November 3rd, 1945. So that was after the fighting was all over with. But World War II was not declared over with until December of 46. That made me it made me a veteran of foreign war. World War II. And the only action we had when I was in there, of course, like I say, we went up there on the Arctic indoctrination, but then they pulled that Berlin blockade, and that scared a lot of us because we were stationed at Anchorage, no, it was Rapid City, South Dakota, where we had 32 B-29s. And the morning after we got the top secret message of what was going to happen, I was on that list, and another master sergeant, commander, was a lieutenant colonel, and a major. We were the only ones that knew where they were going. We spent 3 days and 2 nights typing up service records, messages for them to know where they was going. They did not know where they were going until after they got airborne. And that didn't prove out the way we wanted to, because they wasn't airborne, not an hour anyway, until it was on the radio the exact destination of where they were going to. They were going to Lincoln, England. We sent them over there fully loaded, live ammunition and everything, in case we had to go into war over that Berlin deal. But we didn't. We just sat there for about 6 months, and then they come home. That's the only emergency that come up really when I was there.
So, you said you were part of the Air Force.
Well, when I went in November of 45, there was no Air Force. It was the Army Air Corps. So I enlisted in the Army Air Corps. Then I believe it was in 46, they changed the Army Air Force to the Air Force of a branch of service of its own.
So, when you enlisted, what age were you? What age were you when you enlisted into?
I was 17 years old when I went in.
16. Was it frightening for you, or were you happy that you could serve your country?
Fighting.
Well, were you
Frightened? Was you scared?
Oh, me? No, I wasn't scared of it. I wanted to go. The fact is, I've been trying my best to get my folks to sign for me. I wasn't going to lie about my age and go in, but I wanted them to sign it, and they wouldn't do it. I even tried to get in the Merchant Marines. You could get in there at 16, age 16 if parents consent, but they wouldn't let me go there either. So then as soon as the fight was over with, then my father said he would sign for me to go in if I wanted to go. So that's when, in November, I went in.
all right? So, what would have to be the happiest moment that you had while you were in the military? Like, what was the best?
But the happiest moment,
Yeah.
I think, would probably be the fact that we didn't go into war on that Berlin blockade. Because we didn't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, when you heard that World War II was concluded, were you happy, or were you more sad that you could not actually go?
Was I happy when the war was over with? Sure, I was happy when it was over with. Hey, we all were.
But were you at all, like, sad or anything like that you weren't able to see any action?
I have a hard time understanding.
Were you? What feelings did you had that you didn't be able to see any action in the World War?
What age?
No. What was you sad that you couldn't see any action?
Well, I think mainly the fact that I was a teenager and I wanted to go so bad. Sure, I was sad that I didn't get over there in time, but I wasn't sad before the fight was over with. I was glad it was over with, even though I didn't go. And then when I enlisted, when you enlist like that, they give you a choice of where you're going to go if you go outside the continental United States. And I requested Europe. Well, I'd been through school as a clerk typist, and that's what I was classified as. And then I transferred a couple of different places. I went out to Fort Worth, Texas, and then I moved from there over to Tampa, Florida, and there they called all of us together in a theater saying that some of us had to change our request of where we were going because there were too many people wanted to go to Europe. So I decided since I was in there, and that's the main reason I was wanting was to go someplace. And the only thing that was open was Alaska, and I don't remember what the other one was, and Europe. Anyway, I chose Alaska, and then I was sent up there to Anchorage.
So, how was your life post-war? Did you see anything else military, or did you just keep a normal civilian life?
You didn't do anything after you got out of the service, did you?
No.
I mean, you went to work. Where did you go to work for?
Well, when I first got out of service, I owned a farm down in southern Missouri. I bought when I was in service. And I lost a lot of young stock that I had, and I didn't have them paid for. So I went out to get a job to buy them back. And I went to Kansas City. I worked there for a while and got in a bad snowstorm. And I couldn't get back up there. And they terminated me because I missed without calling in. And so then I looked in the paper to see where I could go. I wanted a job temporary. So I sent in the Kansas City Star Boeing was listening for help. So I got my things together and I come to Wichita. I'd never been to Wichita before in my life. And Boeing wasn't hiring. I drove by Cessna. They wasn't hiring. And then I went back. I had an old Army buddy here, and I was over there staying with him, and he wanted to know if I'd tried beach. And I asked him what it was. And it turned out to be that aircraft factory. I went out the next day and got hired. Well, I hired in. I intended to work less than a year, and I figured I would go back to the farm. I never did go back to the farm because I was good enough that at my job out there, I went in as fabrication, no experience whatsoever, but I happened to be doing the right things or something. I made crew chief in the first line of supervision in less than a year after I was in there. So then I just stayed there till I retired 40 years later. Long 6 months.
So you knew Walter Beach?
No.
You never did?
He died in 1950, and I went out there in 51.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I knew Olive Ann real well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, during the war, how was your life? Were you, like, it was during the Great Depression. How was your life at home?
Home?
During the war?
Well, I had a good life at home. We lived out in, I was a hillbilly, really, down there in the Ozarks in Missouri. And I worked on the farm and stuff in school. And then I got mad at the agriculture teacher because I had a calf that I wanted to have as a display, and they wouldn't let me because it wasn't thoroughbred. And I got mad and threw my book from the store and walked out. And so I didn't finish my high school. And then I went to Kansas City. War was on, and I was too young for most of the jobs, so I had to have a consent or sign a release in order to get a job. A lot of places I could go to work at 16, but I'd have to have some papers signed for permits. Anyway, I did go to work. First I helped an uncle deliver furniture and stuff in Kansas City, and after that I went to work for a factory with a permit until the war was over with, and then I went back to farm in Missouri.
All right. Let's see. How fast did you get promoted to sergeant? Was it fast, or did you have to?
Well, yeah, I think it was fast. I was only in there 3 years, and I don't remember. I think I was sergeant. I probably made sergeant. I don't know whether I was 2 years or. I think it was a little less than 2 years. I think I was probably between 1 and 2 years in there when I made sergeant, and then I was sergeant until I got out.
So, how was your experience at boot camp?
Hell, what?
How was your experience at boot camp during basic training?
Boot camp.
Boot camp.
Yeah, where did you go to boot camp?
Oh, I went to basic training down in Biloxi, Mississippi, and they sent us out in the swamps to crawl and everything else. I was with the last wartime basic training that they had at that time. That was the last one for wartime. And after that, they took the shell fire and gas, poison gas, took that all off. They didn't have to mess with any of that. But we had to go through some of that.
Well, I'm going to ask another question about basic. Wait, no. What battalion were you in, if you remember?
What?
What battalion were you in boot camp? Or company?
Well, I was in the Air Force.
Yeah, no, at boot camp, did you have a company or a battalion or?
Well, it'd be a class, they called them. Class 242 is what the class number was of basic training. It was just a basic training place for the Air Force.
So the 242nd Airborne Marine Corps.
No, that would have had nothing to do with basic training. In order to get into something like that, you have to do all that after you get out of basic training. Just like myself, I never knew what I was going to do. I had my requests in for what I wanted. I didn't get what I wanted, but that's beside the point. They had a deal that they made out what they thought you were best qualified for. And as soon as you finished basic training, if necessary, they'd send you to school. That's what they did to me. They sent me to Denver, Colorado to go to clerk typist school. And you'd be surprised how fast you can learn all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
10 weeks I was able to type. I never had a hand-on typewriter before in my life. In 10 weeks I could type 72 words a minute.
That's pretty fast.
I went to boot camp at Great Lakes, the Navy.
And then
Yeah.
I went up there to see a guy one time, but I was sworn in at Leavenworth, Kansas. When I first went into service, my father said that he would sign for me, so we went to Springfield. I lived in a little town, Buffalo, Missouri, and we were 32 miles from Springfield. We went up to Springfield, and I enlisted, and they had a train the next morning that they could send me to Leavenworth. And so I stayed all night in YMCA, and then I went to Leavenworth. That was the 1st of November. See, Halloween was the night that I actually enlisted. And then I stayed one night in Springfield, and then I was in Leavenworth, Kansas for the examinations and everything, and I sworn in on the 3rd of November. Then they put us on a troop train and sent us to Mississippi.
So when you were in Anchorage at the military base, how was the experience there?
When I was in what?
Anchorage.
Anchorage? I didn't do anything. It was cold. And in Anchorage, of course, it was dark until the latter part of it. And it was way below zero all the time. While I was there from October to middle of April. Well, in April, it was daylight about like it is here now. But during the winter months, the darkness, we only had about half-hour darkness at the worst part. And then it wasn't that way very long, but a little while, a couple, 3 days. And then we had a real severe cold. Like I say, that time that it got down to 72 below zero, we built fire underneath the oil drums to get the oil in the barracks for heat. And naturally we had to thaw out everything to eat.
Do you have any stories that you would like to share at all of times in service?
A story.
Yeah.
What would it be? Well, yeah, one thing that might be interesting. I've never been on a ship, and to this day I haven't been on one. When we went up there, well, I flew up B-29. We stopped in Edmonton, Canada. And, that's something. We stopped there at Edmonton, Canada, and this commander over the flight that was going on, there just see, I don't really, I think there was 3 or 4 airplanes. The rest of them was already up there. And he developed engine trouble. We stayed in officers' BOQs and stuff for sleeping. And, you know, it was just big parties what it amounted to, and he wanted to stay there. And we was there 2 or 3 days, and the commanding officer out of Anchorage, Alaska, wired him and told him that either they got that fixed or he's going to come down and see why. And we took off the next morning and went to Anchorage. That was probably the most unusual thing that happened to me while I was in there. But I don't know anything. And of course, when they pulled that Berlin blockade, that was another thing that was real unusual there is, see, a lot of people lived off of the base. Officers did, and some enlisted people. They had their family up there living in Rapid City, and they were at home, and then they come to work just like you would out here on a job. But they'd be on the base. Well, that morning that we started working on those orders for them to go back over to England on that flight, they were assigned to the base, period. They could not call anybody. They couldn't talk to anybody about it off the base. They were froze to the base until this was all over with. In other words, they couldn't call their family and let them know why they wasn't coming home or what took place. They just, it was secret. And then the next morning, after we give them their orders, I don't know whether I told you that before or not, but we handed those orders out to the commander of the pilot of each one of those airplanes, just as they were loading to take off. They opened their orders after they got airborne. And it wasn't between 30 and 45 minutes or something like that they had it on the radio with the exact destination where they were going. And then they took us up to Provost Marshal's office, the ones that typed up the orders, accusing us of telling somebody. And we finally proved to them we couldn't tell anybody because we was under guard. They watched everything we did. Well, we couldn't do anything there wasn't somebody right there with them because we was on top secret orders. And so they finally decided that what happened, ham operator picked up pilot talking to another pilot.
All right, well, I think if you feel like you've told enough,
I think that's about all I can do. See, that's one that it always bothers me when I'm giving something here for you for school, which I like to have something that you can use and it'll help you. But they asked me, because I'm World War II, to talk about World War II. But I've seen no action whatsoever, other than what I've said here. And that was all peacetime.
well, it still works for me.
It'll work for him.
So
Yeah.
if that'll give you what you want, I'm happy.
Well, it works for me. All right.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for letting me interview you.
He'll work that up and make a good report out of it. He's got pictures and everything.
I've done this before.
Have you?
And
Yeah.
there's 2 other people I talked to like this that they wanted a statement. And I'd always tell them to start with, if you're looking for somebody that's seen any action, that wasn't me. I wasn't there.
Well, I don't need someone who has seen action. I just need someone who
But can
give me a story.
one thing as far as World War II now, it's difficult for you to find them.
Oh, there's not very many left.
Because you see, I'm 89 years old. I was 17 when the fighting was over with.
Yeah.
So, if he's a World War II, he's got to be older than me.
Right. My dad, he went ashore number 2 day at Omaha Beach, France, and he stepped on a landmine, and it took his leg off right below the knee. And then 5 years later, he died in '49. He stepped on a landmine in '44, and right before the war was over.
Yeah.
And yeah. So anyway, he was born in 17. He'd be 100 years old right now.
Yeah.
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 So
I was born in 28. You might have wanted to know that.
Yeah.
Actually, my birthday is March 24th, 1928.
okay. And my dad and his family was all raised out in Andover area, on 13th Street, about a mile and a half out from Andover itself. Yeah, that's where all the Harts were.
Well, I originated from Kansas, even though I'm talking about Missouri.
Yeah,
I was 5 years old when they went to Missouri.
yeah.
We were in Kansas, and my folks had 4 kids, real small. I was 5 years old, and then the 3 of them younger than me, and 1 a little bit older. And they'd been, Mom and Dad had been out card playing, and got home. Their house was on fire.
Well, I'll be.
Lost everything they had.
Well, I'll be.
And Dad decided that he always wanted to go to the Ozarks, and having them Dust Bowl days was just starting out there.
Yeah.
So he went to the Ozarks and went down there.
Have you ever heard of Salem, Missouri?
Yeah.
That's where my wife's from.
Oh, yeah.
We were just there about 3 weeks ago to see her sister.
See, that's over in the southeast.
Yeah. You ever heard of Eminence?
I've heard. I don't
Yeah,
remember
she was born in Eminence, and then they went to St. Louis for a few years, and then back to.
Yeah, that's east of where I was at.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know where Buffalo's at?
Sure.
That's where I was raised.
Yeah, little town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
12 miles out of Buffalo is where I was raised, out in the hills.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, you got everything you need?
Hello?